Happy Sunday, everybody. Hope everybody's weekend went okay and everybody is doing well as usual. Oh, wow. It's been a mixed bag this week. A little bit of behind the scenes stuff. Uh, I got incredibly behind on emails and messages and what have you. Yesterday, we were out of town all day long. My wife had a parade she had to play the pipes for, and then do a spinning and weaving demonstration in the burgeoning metropolis of Prospect, Oregon. Little wide spot in the road nobody's ever heard of, but it was a lot of fun. She did very well. We had a great time. She also played a short concert solo on the pipes for this festival they were having up there, the Timber Festival, and it was just a very good time. But that meant that we were gone from 7 in the morning till about 7 in the evening yesterday, and most of Friday was spent with her getting ready and me helping her pack up the car to hit the road at dark early in the morning. So as a consequence, I got way behind on emails and comments. I am catching up, and I will get to you in due course. Yeah, so be a little bit patient with me. As I said, we were gone all day long. Um, and as a consequence, nothing has changed behind me at all. News on that front, however, is the T track is supposed to be here tomorrow. Here's hoping, all things being equal, it should be. The tracking information has it poised to where it should be here tomorrow afternoon. From there, I get to go ahead and do the start getting. I've got the layout figured and drawn up in Aspire. I do just about everything in Aspire. Heck, I even designed my logo in Aspire or a V-carve Pro at the time, rather. Um, so get the T track down or get it marked out rather. Uh, Start putting it down and cutting up this chunk of MDF that's been sitting over here in the corner and get all that taken care of. Um, I doubt that I'm going to have everything I need for a video next Sunday. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus on um, tramming the spindle, squaring the machine, and making sure that it's level, and that's going to be the video next week. Behind the scenes, I'll also be working on the spoil board. I can do all of the tramming, squaring, and leveling in one day, and then get on with the rest of it. And that'll be video coming out in 2 weeks. So then I could actually start working on projects once I have that spoil board surfaced and I'm ready to go. So then we'll be caught up and the build process will be finished until we do the lean to out back. Still getting the logistics set up for that. Then the dust collection can go away, get put in its permanent location, and I can make a little bit of space in here and then get to working on the assembly table. Now, I had a question over here from Craig Lafferty saying, beyond the waste and spoil boards, what is your first real project planned on the new CNC? That's going to be an assembly table. It's going to be basically a platform with two cabinets built, one on each end, with some storage in between those two cabinets. I'm going to cut out the cabinet parts on the CNC. That's one of the reasons I went for such a large machine, was because I knew there would be a little bit of cabinetry, but not a whole lot. Then after that, uh, I'm going to get back on that pirate and get that epoxy project done. And then I see another question here, and I know I'm going at these out of order. Les Clemens wants to know, did I get my Armorite samples? And I was going to mention this, but since you asked, Les, yes, I did. Follow up from a couple of weeks ago. I was asked, have I ever heard of an exterior grade MDF called Armorite, and had I used it? And last week I mentioned that I had ordered some samples from Roseburg, and Roseburg is the name of the lumber company, the timber company that makes it. And yes, I did. I got now this is how they ship them. I ordered 3 samples off of their website. They were free, and they come with a little book cover on it and a little bit of an explanation and a few photos. They do offer it in 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, and 3/4 inch thicknesses. This is a piece of 3/4 inch. The samples are 8 inches wide by 10 inches tall. And of course, hold it upside down. That's a great one. It is roseburg.com is the website. I didn't think to do it before we went live here. I'll put a link to Roseburg down in the description of this video as soon as we're done. But they show all kinds of different, they have all kinds of different pictures for uses and what have you. One I found interesting were these cornhole boards on the back. Now, I don't know how well this is going to work out. I'm going to give it a try. I got 3 samples because I want to do some tests. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go all the way with the testing. I'm going to run one piece through the planer to see how well it does that way. As if you notice, they CNC routed their logo into it. And I can tell it's CNC routed. You can't see this on camera. I've tried it just within my broadcast studio here, and you can't see it, but I can see milling marks where they used a raster pattern, a raster strategy going back and forth this way. It's very subtle. I can't feel any ridges, but I can see the passes. And it looks like it routes beautifully. I don't know. You can also see here on the edges, it's a little bit darker up on the top and down on the bottom. So I don't know if that's part of the pressing process or if that is their waterproofing. But they say this is excellent for high humidity climates. I got an email from, oh my gosh. I'm opening up the email here real quick. It was from Lucky Warwick here in Oregon as well. He went down to his local dealer who sells this stuff, and they have a test piece that they're putting some samples down into, just submerging it in water, and they're monitoring the process and seeing how well this works out. So I don't have any further information than that, but when he tells me, I'll tell you. What I'm going to be doing with some of this, I'm going to plane some of it down in thickness, and I'm going to surface some of it down in thickness just to see, any kind of a difference and see how it works. And I'm going to be making some fence art for my wife out of this stuff and just testing it, monitoring the progress to see how well it works. I've never worked with the material. We'll find out together. I probably will not do a video on that until after the fact, and I see how well it does. But so there is that. I got on their website. I ordered 3 samples. They sent them to me at no charge, and I found a local dealer that handles it, and we'll go from there. We'll learn together. So that will that will do that. Maybe we'll finish that up. Okay, let's see here. We have got a lot of questions going. I am probably going to butcher this. I believe it's Afifas Sihab. I probably got that wrong, and I do apologize. Says he's really confused, tried Z0 bed position program on his CNC using Vectric, but when I implement it to my ATC CNC, it keeps popping out the Z-axis over limit error. Please, someone help me. Okay, let me preface this by saying I do not have and do not use an automatic tool changer. So that could be a factor that I know nothing about. My first question would be, are you setting the Z0 in Vectric to the table and then setting the Z0 to the table outside on the machine? That could be a factor. The next thing I would say is you may need to get into your controller and reset your soft limits, because I think that's what you have going on there, is it's interfering with one of the soft limits in the controller software. Something is bringing it up into a limit. Usually there is not a lower limit on the Z. So I would look at those soft limits, and you may need to raise them up just slightly in order for that Z to be able to come up without triggering that false limit there. But something isn't playing nice together. This is also assuming that this is the only change that you have made. If you have made another change since the last time the machine worked properly, then it could be something to do with that change. Now, if you've made no other changes to the setup at all, but you're getting a soft limit error simply because you set your Z0 to the machine bed and not the material surface, I would look at the soft limit setting. You may need to change something there. So let me come out of here and see if you have. Okay. Let's see here. Yeah, Wade Custon says you have to home and then zero your bit. On an ATC, each bit has a DRO. Okay, see, now I don't use an ATC, so I don't know how that setup works. So it makes sense to me that each bit has its own setting. It has to know where the bit is, so it knows where to go to change. So I would look into the setup. That would be the first place I would look. Again, this is assuming that you have made no other changes and it worked properly before you did that, before you changed that Z0 setting to the machine bed. So I hope that helps a little bit. And thank you very much for the super chat. I do appreciate that. So, okay, let's get down this list and start wheedling it down. You guys have got some great questions here. Let's see. Gary Mercury says, I use your V-carve to a flat depth suggestion all the time now with an end mill as the tool to hog out the flat area. Thanks, love all your videos. You're very welcome. The main thing to know about the using a flat depth this is a tip that I discovered the hard way, is I always run the V-bit first, because that end mill is going to come out and it's going to hog out all that material, and you may have some thin spots between those pockets. And if you do the V-bit first, you have the entire material surface to add some stability so that you're not getting as much chip out or blowout. Because if you clear out let me use this as an example here. Fold this back so we're not getting confused. If you come in and you clear out this pocket first, like this one is, you've got some thin spots this way, Mark. You've got some thin areas down here. This is probably wide enough you wouldn't have an issue. But if this was any narrower at all, by doing that V-bit first, you eliminate the tendency for it to chip out and break out than when you have all this material missing here. So I always do the V-bit first, then come back and hog out the rest of it with the clearance bit. Now, I know the Vectric software sets it up so that the clearance is on top. Then next in line is the V-bit. I change those around. Now, of course, I do separate pieces of G-code. That's just the way I do things. And so I put all of the V-bit work in one tool path, all of the end mill work in another tool path, and then the profile cutout is last and it's separate by itself. And that's just so I make sure I have all my other work done before I cut the piece free from the skeleton. So let's see here. You also added that your question has to do with feed rates, chip load, etc. on maple hardwood. Did a 13-inch ink drawing of a pineapple and want to engrave as well as profile cut it out. What is the proper settings for maple? Maple's a very hard, dense wood. Depending upon what maple you're using, if it's silver maple or soft maple, it's still a hard, dense wood, but not as hard as what we would call rock maple. I've heard it called by many, many names. Maple is, again, very hard and dense, but it machines very nicely. Just about any way, any way that you have done a hardwood, any other hardwood works good for maple. I don't have a whole heck of a lot of variations for hardwoods. I set up my tools and feeds and speeds pretty much the same for almost all hardwoods. Uh, I don't differentiate between maple or walnut or cherry or sapele or anything like that. They all basically run the same. But again, I set things up on the conservative side, then I increase or decrease my feed rate as it starts cutting. So I may start out at 100 inches per minute, but I may have to slow that down to 50 or 60, depending upon how that particular piece of material is reacting to the cut. I may end up cutting it at 180. I may end up cutting it at 40. It just depends on that particular piece of material at the time. And if you've been using a CNC or even a handheld router, your ear begins to get trained as to the sound of a bit that's struggling, and your eyes get trained to see when a bit looks like it's cutting through material versus trying to plow through it. If it's plowing through, or you're getting a lot of tool marks where you can tell the bit is deflecting, then you need to slow that feed rate down. Now, chip load is important, but the final quality, the finished quality of the final product is more important, because if you can have beautiful chips, but if it looks like garbage, those chips don't make a difference. So there's a balancing act to be had there. There's no magic number, because I have come across different densities of wood in the same piece of material, and they both react differently. You're going to find situations where you're climb cutting and conventional cutting, especially on the initial plunge and the first cut in like clearing out a pocket. You're cutting both climb and conventional at the same time, and they're going to react differently. Uh, it also is going to react differently if you're cutting with the grain or against the grain, or kind of a little bit of both. So there is really no magic number. Just monitor it, and if you can adjust your feed rates on the fly, then do that, and listen for it. The bit will tell you when it's struggling, and it'll tell you when it's cutting just fine, and you're making getting the proper chip load, and and it's working. That's, I know that sounds a little vague, but without showing you, there's really no way of explaining it. And believe me, when I get into these projects on this new CNC, we're going to be exploring that. I'm going to get a lot deeper into chip load, feed rates, spindle speeds, things of that nature. But even the bit manufacturers will tell you to use their numbers as suggestions. They are guidelines. Nothing is written in stone. So there is a little bit of there's a little bit of give and take there. There's a little bit of leeway. So, but remember, you are going for a good final product, because perfect chip load is irrelevant if you don't like how it turned out. So, you know, but we are going to take a much, much deeper dive into that subject than I've ever gone before, because with a variable speed spindle that is controlled by the software, I have that level of control. Where before I was using a router, although it was variable speed, I could not adjust that speed as it was cutting. Now I can. So I'm going to get a little bit deeper into that. So hope that helps. I mean, you know, there, but just know that there is no magic answer. So, let's see here. Darwin Vanden Bosch says, any advice on staining a stacked letter sign? I have a little bit, but I'm going to do a stacked letter sign and focus a little bit more on finishing in exactly the way you're talking about, I think. And I've seen other people do it, and that is where they will finish the top surface of the sign before they ever make the first cut. Then they'll cut that top layer, then finish the next layer, then cut out that bottom layer. So you have, say, a gray stain on top, and then just picking names out of thin air here, a red oak stain down on the next level, and then carved away to natural color at the back, and then stain that after it's done. I've seen that done. I've also seen people who will cut the whole thing and then mask and paint or stain. Uh, there's a multitude of ways of finishing these, and I'm going to get into a couple of them. I need to make a couple of stack tech signs, and it's the perfect opportunity to get into that. I am not a finisher by any stretch of the imagination. I have done some finishing in the past, but there's more that I don't know than I do know. But we're going to explore some options together, and that is one of them: is painting or staining a stack tech sign. So I don't have a specific answer for you now, but watch that space. It is coming. And here's hoping I can get it done. Okay, yeah, and here is the follow-up. I have a lot of bleeding. That is going to be a constant struggle. The only way you can avoid bleeding is seal it. There is a product I use. It's made by Zinzer, and I will put a link in the description as soon as we're done here. And it's called Seal Coat. It is a shellac-based sanding sealer. It's very thin, and it's an alcohol-based shellac sanding sealer. I use it a lot. And in fact, I'm going to use it on the spoil board. After I get the MDF and get it all glued down and get it in position, I'm going to go over the entire thing with sanding sealer, surface it, and then seal the top. It is a very good product. It's not super expensive, but it'll help as far as that bleeding is concerned. So I'll put a link to it down in the description of this video. And this is the perfect opportunity to cut and test on some scrap before you do the project. Now, Michael Mazalik has an excellent point. Have patience. This is one of those things you need to practice and get good at, get used to. And you'll figure out the little nuances and everything. A lot of people don't like finishing because some things like this require a bit of time, a bit of patience, and a lot of work behind the scenes. It's something that you have to get used to, and a lot of people just don't want to take the time. But what they don't realize is, and maybe Michael can back me up on this, the finish can make or break the project. It can be the best 3D carve in the world, but if the finish is less than stellar, you've got a less than stellar project. So, the greatest hand cut dovetails in the world will look like trash if the finish is, if you take shortcuts and try to eliminate a little bit of care. So it's just it's a learning process. Les says, make sure your shellac is de-waxed. Seal coat is 100% de-waxed. So there is none of that, no wax to interfere with other surfaces, or not surfaces, no interference to other with other finishes. That's what I was trying to think of. Don't get old. You forget things while you're talking. So, but yeah, that will be coming up. Let's see here. Go down this direction. And Gary Mercury also wants to know, what's the best way to attach the dust collection to my CNC from the ceiling so that it doesn't hit the CNC as it moves around? There's a multitude of ways. There is, I have a bracket. I'm using my cursor like you can see it. I have a bracket up here it's mounted on the front of the Z that holds the hose above the dust shoe, and that holds it and takes up the strain of this flex hose. That bracket came from Russell Tyndall over at Blue Line Wood Flags, and I'll put a link. Let's see here. I'll put a link to his video that he did on putting some lighting under his Avid CNC gantry. And in that video, he talks about that bracket. And you can go to his website. He's got links in his description. You can go to his website and download the STL files for free to 3D print that bracket. So that's a big help right there. That takes the strain off of the hose here. Can't really see it. Let me play with my camera a little bit here. You can see right now I have just a flex hose coming out of the dust collector. And again, all this is temporary. And that runs into a piece of PVC pipe. And my flex hose is connected to it on this end over here. It's hanging by a piece of mason's cord. And that mason's cord is like a shock absorber as well as a mount, so that when the gantry moves around, it swings on that cord and goes in the correct direction. And between that shock absorbing cord that allows that pipe to pivot and this bracket, which basically tows the hose around with it, that keeps it from smacking into the machine. Now, there's a fine line you got to find there where the gantry is pulling the hose around, but it's not pulling that hose tight. But then again, when you get right up there to that center point, it's not compressing it to the point to where it's going to try to move something around. So, I mean, that helps. It's not 100% perfect, but it does work. So, thank you, Steve, for being on top of that. I'm trying to get to it too, but thank you for being on top of that. So there is that. And it's, again, mine is still a work in progress. This is all temporary. So this is likely to change. Now, I've seen other solutions like swing arms and what have you. And I will probably be incorporating a swing arm into my system so that it'll be mounted on the back wall there so that it'll move as the as the spindle moves on the x-axis. Come on, Mark, spit it out. And just trying to get everything to where it will move in conjunction with one another, and try to keep the flex hose as short as reasonable, but still have the ability to reach all four corners at various heights. So it's a balancing act that I'm still learning. So let's see. Larry Stoss says bungee cord works great. Yeah, and that's another option. And we'll work it. We'll work it. John says I use scrap bicycle inner tube. Another good one. So, boy, the trolls have come out, and it is a fun balance. So, yeah, trying to find all the trolls and get rid of them. So if you see anything in the chat that makes you go, huh? I'm working on it. So let's see here. Let's see, get down here. Bob Hamfelt says, explain the use of the XY offset on datum setup. Okay, let me get over here into Aspire. And that is over here. You can use an offset. Now, I'm going to be doing some videos where I will use this, but this comes in real handy when we're working on with a jig or with a fixture. Excuse me. If I have a fixture that well, let me go ahead and stop sharing because you know what I'm talking about. Um, if I'm working with a fixture that's going to clamp a piece of material, say I make repetitive, I make several copies of the same piece. It's the same size. It's always going to be the same XY datum position. What I can do is I can put that piece of material down in a fixture that's going to be at the same place all the time. I can clamp down that piece of material, put the, I can set my XY datum to the corner of the fixture and have enter that offset between the corner of the fixture and the corner of the material. I can put that into Aspire there on job setup, and it will know where the corner of the material is all the time. So that I don't have to do a bunch of setup on that. I can put my piece of material, my fixture down, clamp my piece of material down, set my XY datum to that fixture, and it knows where to go to start carving that design. Then I can unclamp that piece, put in the next piece, clamp it down, and it knows to go where to go and what to do. So I will be getting into that in later videos, but basically that's done with fixturing. Almost always, not 100% of the time. But I'm going to be doing a lot of fixturing because there's going to be a lot of repetitive cuts on multiple pieces of material, and that's where fixturing really shines. Because if you're doing one individual piece and you clamp that puppy down, using an offset in job setup doesn't really benefit you. I mean, there are occasions where you might want to use that, but 999 times out of 1,000, you'll just go set your XY datum to one corner or the other, or the center of the material, wherever you normally set it, and be done. You don't need to worry about an offset. But I'm going to be getting into that, believe me, and you're probably going to get tired of it. So let's see. Lewis Stanton wants to know how far below the surface of the MDF is the T-track. I'm not exactly sure on the height of the T-track, but basically the T-track is going to go on the table, then 3/4 inch MDF is going to butt up next to it. So whatever the difference in height is, that's how far below the surface of the MDF. And that's going to change as I surface it down. But again, you know, when I get it down, when I surface it down close to the top of the T-track, I'll just surface the entire thing, glue down some 1/4 inch strips, surface those, and drive on. That's what I did with the Gatton CNC, and that's what I did with the shoestring budget CNC, and it works beautifully. So I'm not, I can't give you a number just yet because I don't have the T-track in hand. And I don't go by what they put on the ads for the T-track. I measure when I have the piece. So, you know, there is that. Okay, Russell Faraday says, I use offset so a profile cutout near the edge does not bite into the fixture. Yes, there is that. And avoid fastening methods. You know, if you have clamps in strategic spots, sometimes that offset can be used to avoid that clamp. You know, that just all has to be kind of worked into the design. So, Alan says, Mark, have you trammed your Ravid yet? Wondering how it went. That is going to happen. I'm going to physically do the tramming tomorrow. That'll be the next video next week. Tramming, leveling, and squaring the table and then tramming the spindle. That's going to be next week's video. So I will get that done tomorrow, get that all edited and scheduled to go live next Sunday morning. So let's see. Let me get back into your questions. Okay. Don Big Bagwarf, I apologize if I have butchered your name. Saying the wrong thing is my thing. I do that all the time. So I apologize. Once you've carved a pocket, where do you start the zero depth if carving a design in the pocket? Okay, let's do that. Let me go over here to Aspire again, and we'll put some geometry out here. We'll cancel changing that. And let's say here is my pocket. And that's fine. And let's say I have, oh, I don't know. Let's go with a star here. We'll just go like so, close, and I'll select my pocket, tap F9 to put it in the center, select my star, tap F9 to put it in the center, and I'm going to pocket this out. So we'll do a pocket real quick. My cut depth, I'm going to make 1/4 of an inch deep, and I'll just use an 1/8 inch end mill. So let's remove that 1/4 inch end mill. And just for the sake of brevity here, I'm going to bring this down to, we'll do it in one pass. I would not do that for in the real world. Hello. Oh, dummy. One pass, set passes. There we go. Okay. Yes, and I know I wouldn't do that normally. Calculate. Okay. Now, so we'll preview that, let it run. And I now have my 1/4 inch deep pocket. Okay, now if you look right down here, you'll see some readouts when I have the cursor up here in the pocket that I just cut. And you'll see it says the Z is negative 0.25. That's the surface I want to start carving that design in. So that's going to be my start depth for the next design. So let's say I want to do that star. We'll close this. We'll go back over here, and I'm going to do this a little bit differently. I'm going to select my star, do a profile tool path, and my start depth is going to be 0.25. And I want to cut 1/16 of an inch deep. So I don't remember right off the top of my head what 1/16 of an inch is. So I'll just type 1/16, then tap the equals button and let the calculator tell me what the decimal equivalent of that is. I'm going to select a 60-degree V-bit. There you are. And I'm going to carve that on the vector. So it's going to use that 60-degree V-bit to carve that design right there. Okay. And that's all I'm going to do. I'm not going to do anything else. And we'll just calculate that. And now what's going to happen is it's going to start that cut at the depth that I started from. So we'll preview it. And there it is. So if we go ahead and we put a check mark here, so it's illustrating the tool path, and I kind of turn it on the side here. Looking at this tool path, remember red is a rapid move. That's where the machine, the bit is up above the surface of the material, and it's moving over to the start point where it's going to plunge in and do the cut. This bluish greenish vertical line right here, that's the plunge move. It's going to plunge down into the surface of that pocket, then start cutting. And the dark blue is the cut itself. And you can see that there is no cut above the level of this pocket. So if you carve a pocket, come back out here again and I'll turn off that illustration. If you carve a pocket, put your cursor in that pocket after the preview, look at your readouts right down here, right below my cursor, and see where your Z is. Conversely, what you can do, if you have a couple of different levels out here, you can come over and hover your cursor over that pocket. And if you look down, the third line from the bottom in that little bubble that pops up tells you what the maximum depth of that pocket is. And it'll disappear after a minute. Put it back over there. You can see it says max depth 0.25 inches. So that's where you would set, close this. That's where you would set, come on, open up, your start depth on your next toolpath to cut out that design. So I hope that makes sense. That way you're not cutting air before it works its way down. Now, one more thing here to talk about. When you set your start depth, that's where that cut is going to start. You want to set the cut depth to how deep you want it to cut in. If you want it to be, okay, in other words, what I'm getting at is it's going to start at 1/4 of an inch down below the top surface of the material, and it's going to carve to that depth. So it doesn't subtract your start depth. Now, you may know you have 3/4 inch material, and you want that to cut a 1/2 inch deep. Well, if you start at 1/4 inch down and you cut a 1/2 inch deep, it's going to cut all the way through, because 1/4, your start depth, and a 1/2 inch, that's your material thickness. So you have to remember, if you want that star to be a 1/2 inch down from the top, you take a 1/4 inch start depth and a 1/4 inch cut depth. These two added up will be the total depth of cut. And if it's the same as your material thickness, it's going to cut all the way through the material. So do know that. A lot of people get in trouble that way. So, okay. I hope that answers that question. So, excuse me. Roger the Tinker says negative 0.25. You can do negative 0.12, negative 0.25, but let me show you what happens here. Let me go back here into my preview, and we'll reset the preview. Close, and I'll go in here, and I'll put in negative 0.25 and recalculate the toolpath. Calculate it. All right. Now I'll turn off that toolpath so we're not looking at it. I'll do my pocket real quick here. It was too late to do the undo last, so I had to reset the whole thing. Thankfully, it's not a big deal. Now I'm going to turn on the profile and look, and there's no difference. There's zero difference. So I can come down here, preview, and it's exactly the same. The software knows that your start depth is going to be below the surface. So you can put in negative 0.25, but you don't have to. It will do it. There's no difference in this situation. Not always, not every toolpath, but on this profile toolpath, it knows you mean down here. There's no difference. So you can put that in if you like. It makes no difference. It doesn't hurt anything no matter which way you go. So, okay, let's see here. So I hope that helped you out, Don. I hope that answered your question. Okay, let's see here. Roger Cuts and Creation, channel member. Thank you for being a channel member. Mark, do you understand the reason for doing offsetting and epoxy inlays? Yes. Is it for the taper of the V-bit? In a manner of speaking, yes. And I don't have the illustrations on this computer. I need to migrate all that stuff out here. I'm working on it. But basically what happens is when you have, okay, let me try it with this and see if this works. When you have a pocket like so, and you come along and use the V-bit, it's going to leave material standing, okay? And you know that. The reason for offsetting is so you don't have a little trail of wood that runs between the two inlays. So basically you have, okay, let me try to get my hands here. You have two V carvings that are coming close together, all right? So if you have them right there meeting, that's fine until you surface some of that material off. Then suddenly you have that wood poking through in between those two inlays. By offsetting those vectors so that they meet, you won't have material, you won't be machining into or sanding into the substrate. You'll have epoxy on epoxy. That's the reason for offsetting. Now, I talked about that in my offsetting video when I, let's see, I'll put a link to that. I know that sounded real nice to you guys. When I did my offsetting video, I talked about that, and I had some images that demonstrated that. But basically what it is it's to remove that little peak of the substrate that's in between the two epoxy inlays so you don't surface or sand into it and expose it. On the other hand, there are maybe cases where you do want that to shine through because you want that to be your dividing line. You don't want to use black or something like that. So, I mean, it's, again, I say it a lot, it's a balancing act. It's what you want. But I'll put a link to that offsetting vectors video down in the description of this video as soon as we're done live. I've just made a note. And that'll better explain it because I use illustrations to demonstrate what I'm talking about. So it's basically to give you an overall cleaner finished product to where you have, say, blue epoxy meeting red epoxy and not have a line of substrate in between. So thanks. That's what I thought. Yes, that's exact. You were exactly right. So let's see. Marvin May says, do you have any videos on fluting? No, but I will. I'm going to have a couple of projects coming up that will require me to use the fluting toolpath. And I just haven't had occasion to use it. But I do have a couple projects coming up that I would use the fluting toolpath on. And so watch this space, you know, more as the weeks unfold. I've got a list a mile long, and it's approaching a mile and a half. We're also, as much as I hate to say it, this is August. We're getting close to the holiday season. So Christmas gifts are going to be a focus here pretty quick. So a lot of the videos I'm going to be creating are going to be in conjunction with Christmas gifts. And that gives me a great opportunity. Excuse me. Good grief, Mark. That gives me a great opportunity to try new techniques and to demonstrate to you how I'm using those techniques and how to implement them in your projects as well. So I'm going to be very, very busy with the gifts, which means I'm going to be very, very busy with the videos. I can't guarantee you that I'm going to go back to a video a week because some of these projects are going to take several weeks on their own to create. But do know that I'll be pumping them out, believe me, because that list is not getting any shorter while I'm still in the build process here. We're also in the middle of summer, so I've been pulled in other directions out there. I'm trying to get the driveway taken care of so I have a tough shed that's my tool shed. I've got to get it moved and then finish graveling a driveway. And I mean, you don't care about that, but yeah, that's where a lot of my time is spent. And that's why I went to every other week to give me time to do those other projects that don't have anything to do with what we're doing here on this channel. So, I think I got through everybody's question, and I hope you got an answer that works for you. Uh, Alan Heffernan, you are the man. Thanks for all you do. For those of you who are not channel members, Alan was my guest last week, and we went over the building of a very cool skeleton clock he made. I'll put a link to his channel uh, and that video on his clock, which was extremely cool. I'll put that link down in the description of this as soon as we're finished, and you can check it out for yourself. Uh, the the channel members, you guys know, you saw it, and it was very cool. If you'd like to be a part of that inside club and see what we're doing over there on Monday nights during the members only live stream, you can find information on how to become a channel member. Just click the join button right next to the subscribe button. A panel will pop up, a video will play, it tell you all about how to become a channel member. You can cancel at any time. There's no obligation. And just basically see what the folks behind the scenes are doing in exclusive content over there. Again, I want to thank all the channel members. Because I was gone yesterday, I didn't set up the members only live stream yesterday. I did it this morning. If you go over to my main channel page and click on the community tab right underneath the banner photo, you hit that community tab. The links to tomorrow evening's members only live stream are there. For you big time supporters, the link to join me on camera in the broadcast software is there as well. And I'll see you all tomorrow evening at 5:30 Pacific, 8:30 Eastern. For everybody else, thank you for joining me today. Thank you very much for the super chats. You guys are an amazing audience. I still say, and I will stand by my statement, that I have the best viewers on YouTube. You guys are just tremendous. And I appreciate each and every one of you. And thank you very much for watching, for commenting, for subscribing, for sharing, and for the awesome things that you guys do behind the scenes. There really is no way I can express my gratitude enough. So for channel members, I'll see you tomorrow. For everybody else, I'll see you next week for a discussion on tramming, leveling, squaring, and doing all of the tedious stuff that nobody wants to do, but we have to do if we expect to get a decent quality project. Yeah. So until then, y'all have a great week, and y'all take care. Get out in the shop. Go do something cool. Make some chips. Get out of here, will you? Thanks a lot, folks. See you next week. Have a good one.